dead weight. My daughter-in-law didn't shout it. She said it the way someone reads a line off a grocery receipt. Flat, already moving on before she finished the sentence. She was standing at the kitchen island in her silk robe, scrolling through her phone, and I was 3 feet away pouring my first cup of coffee for the day. She didn't look up. I told my husband last night, she continued. I said, your mother is dead weight in this house. She doesn't pay rent, she barely eats, and every time I turn around, she's in the way. I set the coffee pot down slowly. The kitchen smelled like her candles. Expensive ones. The kind that come in ceramic jars and cost $40 and smell like nothing you'd actually find in nature. I'm standing right here, Carla, I said. She looked up then, not with embarrassment, with something closer to impatience. I know, she said. That's sort of the point. She picked up her phone and walked out of the kitchen. I heard her office door click shut upstairs. I stayed where I was. The coffee was already going cold. I'm 71 years old. My husband passed 8 years ago, and when he did, something in the geography of my life shifted in ways I didn't fully understand until I was already living inside the consequences. My son was the one who suggested I move in. Just until you get settled, he said. That was 3 years ago. The room I sleep in used to be a craft room. Before that, a home office. Now it's mine, which means it has a twin bed I bought myself, a dresser that smells faintly of paint thinner, and a curtain that blocks most but not all of the light from the neighbor's motion sensor. I have my own small bathroom, which I am genuinely grateful for. The door has a lock I installed myself one Sunday afternoon while my son was watching football and Carla was at brunch. She thought I was helpless. She thought I had nothing. She was wrong on both counts. 3 days after my husband died, I made a quiet decision. Not out of grief and not exactly out of fear, but out of something in between. A kind of clear-eyed practicality that comes when you realize the world doesn't slow down to let you catch your breath. He'd left a life insurance policy. Not large, but real. $180,000 after everything settled. I also sold the small bookkeeping business we'd run together for 22 years. Another $95,000. I deposited it all into an account I opened in my maiden name at a bank with no local branches, the kind you manage entirely online, the kind that doesn't send paper statements to your home address. I told no one. My son assumed the insurance had barely covered the funeral. I didn't correct him. Carla assumed I had a few thousand in a checking account and a Social Security check that barely covered my prescriptions. I let her assume. In the 3 years I'd lived in their house, that account had grown quietly, the way savings do when no one's spending them. A few low-risk investments my late husband would have approved of. A government bond I bought the year interest rates ticked back up. As of last Thursday morning, it sat at $263,400. Not bad for a dead weight. I keep a small lockbox under the sewing supplies in my closet. Inside, my birth certificate, a copy of my husband's will, the deed to the house we sold when I moved here, and a laminated card with the account number printed in small type. I check it sometimes, not because I'm worried it'll disappear, but because it reminds me of something important. That I chose this. I also keep a notebook, brown cover, spiral bound, corners worn soft from 3 years of handling. I started it the week I moved in. The first page is neat. Columns drawn with a ruler, blue ink, a date on every line. I had been a bookkeeper for over 2 decades. Precision is not a habit I can turn off. The pages tell a quiet story. For $200, new water heater installed November. My son said we'd split it. We didn't split it. $3,800. Nico's orthodontist, 2 years of payments. Carla said she'd pay me back in the spring. Spring came and went. $6,100. Roof repair on the addition. My son said his contractor friend would do it cheap. The friend charged full rate. $900. Carla's work conference registration. She asked if I could cover it, just this once. This once happened 4 times in 3 years. $2,200. New refrigerator. Mine. The one that came with my things when I moved in, which they now use every day. $1,150. Nico's school supplies, backpacks, field trips, the class trip to Washington, D.C. that Carla forgot to budget for in March. Not 1 cent back, not once. There were other entries, not about money. My son forgot my birthday 2 years running. I noted it without judgment. Just the date and a short line, remembered by no one in the house. And then there was the entry I made in February. Carla had added herself as account manager on my credit card without asking. I discovered it when I logged in to pay my balance and saw a second name listed under account access. I didn't confront her. I noted it in the notebook and made a call to the bank the next day. That was the moment things shifted. Not to anger. I want to be clear about that. I have not been angry. Anger is expensive, and I have spent my life being careful with what I spend. What shifted was my patience, specifically my willingness to extend it any further. I found Mr. Albright through a friend of a friend who'd gone through her own divorce at 68 and come out the other side with her name on nothing she didn't intend to own. He had an office on the 4th floor of a building downtown. No fountain in the lobby, no framed inspirational quotes on the walls, just clean lines and the kind of quiet. That means the soundproofing is good. He stood when I walked in, offered his hand. "Mrs.," he started. "Just tell me what I need to do," I said, and sat down. He smiled slightly. The kind of smile you give someone who has just saved you 20 minutes of preamble. We spent 2 hours together. I showed him the notebook. He looked at every page without rushing. When he finished, he set it down carefully, the way you handle something that has taken a long time to fill. "You'd like to separate your assets," he said. "Completely." "Completely," I agreed. He walked me through the options. A revocable trust, which gives flexibility. An irrevocable trust, which gives protection. A pour-over, well, that funnels anything outside the trust into it upon my death, leaving no ambiguity, no room for a family member to contest in court and win on a technicality. I chose all three. "Beneficiary?" he asked. I pulled a photograph from my purse. My grandson Nico and me, 2 summers ago at a county fair, him eating kettle corn and squinting against the sun, me laughing at something he'd just said. I don't even remember what. I set it on the desk. "My grandson," I said. 15 years old. He's the only person in that house who says good morning like he means it. Mr. Albright wrote the name down. He didn't ask why not my son. He didn't ask why not Carla. Some answers are so obvious they don't require the question. We began the paperwork. I signed every line, slowly, clearly, in the same blue ink I'd used in the notebook. My grandson knocked on my door that same evening. He had a habit of doing that, not barging in the way teenagers sometimes do, but actually knocking, waiting, then cracking the door an inch and asking, "You busy?" "Never for you," I said. He came in and sat in the corner chair, long legs folded at an odd angle, sketchbook balanced on his knee. He was working on something I couldn't quite see from where I sat. "Mom and Dad were arguing again," he said after a while. "Not as a complaint. Just an observation, the way you'd note the weather." "I know," I said. "She said something about you at dinner, about the room, how it's wasted on." He stopped, looked down at his drawing. I didn't like it. I looked at him. He'd grown at least 2 inches since I moved in. He had his grandfather's eyes, the particular dark brown that doesn't change color in different light. "You don't have to protect me," I said. "I'm not protecting you," he said. "I'm just saying I didn't like it." There's a difference, and he knew it. I didn't push. After a while, he showed me what he was drawing. A woman at a table, hands folded, a cup in front of her. The lines were careful, unhurried. "Who is she?" I asked. He looked at me. "You," he said, "the way you sit in the morning. Like you're thinking about something nobody else in the room can see." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That night, I wrote his name at the top of a clean page in the new notebook. The one I was filling with different kinds of entries. Things I still had left to do. The bank visit took 40 minutes. I went on a Wednesday morning to a branch across town, not the one near the house. I brought the credit card account number and the documentation showing the unauthorized addition. The young man at the desk looked at the papers, then looked at me and said, "You'd like her removed?" "Immediately," I said. "And I'd like a new card issued under my name only, sent to a P.O. box." I slid a piece of paper across the desk with the address. I'd rented the box the week before. $12 a month. Best $12 I'd spent in years. He processed everything without comment. I appreciated that. While I was there, I also reviewed the automatic payments tied to my checking account. There were 11 of them. 3 had been added without my knowledge: a grocery delivery service, a streaming subscription, and something called a home management app I had never heard of and had certainly never downloaded. I canceled all 11. The ones I genuinely needed, I would re-enter myself from the new account. When I stepped back out onto the sidewalk, the sun was unexpectedly warm for October. I stood for a moment and let it sit on my face. Then I walked 2 blocks east to the attorney's office. Ms. Dunmore had been recommended to me by a woman at my church. Small congregation, older crowd, the kind of place where people know things about estate lawyers because they've needed them. She had a calm, no-nonsense manner and the kind of desk that said, "Everything on here has a purpose." I gave her the trust paperwork Mr. Albright had drafted and asked her to make it irrevocable. She read it, made 2 small adjustments. "Do you want to explicitly exclude your daughter-in-law from any inheritance?" she asked. "My son inherits nothing," I said. "Not out of anger, out of clarity. Everything goes to my grandson in trust until he's 25. I need it airtight." She nodded. "Judges respect specificity. I'll name them both and state your intent clearly." "Good." I paused. "I'd also like to ensure no one in that household retains any informal financial access to anything in my name." She confirmed the credit card situation had already been handled at the bank. She walked me through the healthcare directive as well. Who could make decisions if I couldn't make them myself? I named my closest friend from my bookkeeping years, a woman who still called me on my birthday every single year without being reminded. I signed where I needed to. At the door, Ms. Dunmore said, "You've done something a lot of people wait too long to do." "I waited long enough," I said. "I bought myself something on Thursday." This surprised me, not the act of buying, but the ease of it. How I walked into a small shop downtown and found it immediately, as if it had been waiting for me. A silk scarf, deep burgundy, almost the color of dried roses. I had never owned anything in that shade. My late husband used to say that color looked like I was trying to say something. He meant it as a compliment. I never quite believed him, so I never bought the thing he was complimenting me toward. I didn't look at the price tag. I paid in cash. At home, I folded the scarf in the drawer beside the lockbox and wrote 1 line in the new notebook. "First thing I've bought for no reason except that I wanted it." That night at dinner, Carla mentioned the grocery delivery service wasn't working. "It keeps saying payment failed," she said, frowning at her phone. "I don't know what's wrong with it." "Strange," I said, and went back to my soup. My son looked at me for a moment longer than usual. He has always been better at reading a room than Carla. He just rarely does anything with what he reads. The notebook left my room by accident. I'd set it on the counter while I was looking for a pen, and when I came back, it was gone. I found it 40 minutes later on the dining room table, Carla standing over it with one hand on her hip. "What is this?" she asked. "A record," I said. "Of what?" "Of everything I've contributed to this household since I moved in." She flipped through the pages quickly, the way you do when you're not sure whether to be offended or frightened. My son came in from the hallways, stopped when he saw us. "There's a line here for the refrigerator," she said. "I didn't ask you to buy a refrigerator." "You didn't have to," I said. "That was mine. I brought it when I moved in. You've been using it for 3 years. She closed the notebook. "You've been keeping score this whole time." "No," I said. "I've been keeping track. There's a difference." My son looked at the notebook, then at me. "Mom, there's also a line," I said, "for the time you added yourself as a manager on my credit card without asking me. I'd like that acknowledged." The room went very quiet. Carla's face moved through several expressions before settling on something controlled. "I had access because we were sharing household expenses." "You had access," I said, "because I hadn't yet understood that I needed to read my own statements." She set the notebook down. "I think we all need to take a breath." "I've been taking breaths for 3 years," I said. "I'm done taking them quietly." My son started to speak. I held up one hand. "I've spoken with a financial advisor and an attorney," I said. "My estate is fully in order, and neither of you is named in it. That isn't a punishment. It's a decision I made with a clear head and a full understanding of what has happened in this house." Carla's voice went thin. "You're leaving everything to Nico." To my grandson, yes. He's 15. The trust holds until he's 25. Ms. Dunmore was very thorough. She looked at my son. He was staring at the floor. After everything we've done for you, she said finally. I thought about that for a moment. Genuinely tried to locate what she meant by it. Tell me one thing, I said. One thing you've done for me that wasn't done because it benefited you first. She didn't answer. I picked up the notebook from the table and walked back to my room. I heard them talking in low voices on the other side of the door. I didn't press my ear to the wood. I didn't need to know exactly what they were saying. I already knew what they were feeling, and more importantly, I no longer needed to manage it. I'd been packing in small increments for a week. Not dramatically. I didn't want a scene, didn't need one. A box of books sent to a storage unit I'd rented the previous month. My good dishes, wrapped in newspaper, moved out over 2 quiet Saturdays. When the suitcase finally sat by the door, it looked almost casual. Just the essentials. Just what was mine. My grandson found me in the hallway. He looked at the suitcase, then at me. He didn't pretend not to understand. Where are you going? He asked. I've rented an apartment, I said. Small. 2 bedrooms, but I only need one. Good light in the kitchen. He was quiet for a moment. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, I said, and I meant it not as reassurance, but as fact. I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out an envelope with his name on the front in my best handwriting. Not the trust documents. Ms. Dunmore held those. This was a letter. 4 pages. Everything I wanted him to know before I stopped being in the next room to say it. Don't open it tonight, I said. Open it when you need it. He took it with both hands, held it the way you hold something you know matters, without yet knowing why. Will you still call? He asked. Every Sunday, I said, after the 10 o'clock. He nodded. Then he hugged me, arms around my shoulders, chin on the top of my head, the way he'd done since he got taller than me at 13. I stayed still inside it. No rush, no politeness pulling me away. When he let go, his eyes were wet. He wiped his face with the sleeve of his hoodie and pretended he hadn't. She doesn't deserve you, he said quietly. Nobody deserves anyone, I said. You just decide who you show up for. I picked up the suitcase. The front door opened without drama. The October air was clean and cool, the particular kind that smells like something ending and something about to begin in the same breath. A cab I'd called pulled up to the curb. The driver came around to take the suitcase without being asked. I did not turn around. The apartment is on the 3rd floor of a building 12 minutes from the library. One window in the kitchen looks east. Sunrise comes through it at an angle that makes the whole room go amber for about 20 minutes every morning. I make my coffee and stand there and watch it. I've been here 6 weeks. My grandson texts every few days. Small things, a photo of something he drew, a line from a book he found in my boxes, a question about whether I remember the time we got lost at the state fair when he was 9 and ended up buying corn dogs from a vendor who told us the same joke 3 times. I remember. I always remember. He opened the letter on a Sunday 3 weeks after I left. He texted me that evening. Grandma, I read it twice. You sound like yourself. I wrote back, that's because I finally am. His mother has not contacted me. My son called once, left a voicemail that was more about logistics than anything real. Something about a piece of mail that needed forwarding. I texted the P.O. box address and left it there. Maybe he'll find his way to something more honest eventually. Maybe he won't. That is not a problem I'm responsible for solving. I bought a proper coat last week. Wool, charcoal gray, double-breasted. The kind of coat I would have called impractical for the past 15 years because there was always something more urgent to spend money on. I wore it to the library on Saturday. The woman at the reference desk said it was beautiful. Thank you, I said. I think so too. This morning I made a new list. Not of grievances or contributions or things I was owed, just ordinary things. Eggs from the farmer's market. A library card under my own name at this branch. A call to my friend from the bookkeeping years who is flying in from Phoenix next month and will sleep in the 2nd bedroom. A visit to my grandson, planned for his birthday in February. Just the 2 of us, no house required, no one else's schedule to work around. At the bottom of the list I wrote one sentence. Do not shrink again. I won't. If you've read this far, if you've recognized yourself somewhere in these pages, in the silences and the ledger lines, and the small cold moments when someone who was supposed to see you simply looked past you, I want to say something plainly. You are not overreacting. You are not too sensitive. You are not wrong for adding up the math and arriving at the conclusion that it doesn't balance in your favor. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to stop funding someone else's comfort at the cost of your own dignity. You are allowed to open an account in your own name. Write a letter no one else reads until you're ready. Buy yourself something the color of dried roses and walk out a door without looking back. The people who depended on your silence will call it cruelty. They will say you changed, as if change is the same thing as betrayal. Let them say it. You know the difference. You've always known the difference. You were just waiting for the moment to stop pretending otherwise. That moment is now. It's always now if you choose it. And if this story felt familiar, if you heard your own name somewhere inside it, share it with someone who needs to remember she's not alone. Or keep it quietly for yourself, the way I kept everything else. Either way, you've already started.